Welcome to another guitar business show on YouTube. My name is David Hart, and today I have a special guest, Emma Watts, formerly known as Emma Payne, for anyone who's known her for a long time. Now, Emma is someone who we've been working together for a long, long time. We go back to about the year 2000, and Emma, when she first came to me, was emigrating to Australia, and what she was trying to do was to keep herself occupied. So she came in and offered her services to me for free, which was very hard to resist. It was like, what's the catch here? What do you want? But I was sort of thinking, no, but she comes across really well, and she immediately sold herself to me. So even though I wasn't paying her anything, I said, all right, well, let's see what. She told me the circumstances, and I brought her in, and it's just ever since then it's been a match made in heaven in terms of our business. And Emma's record, there's a lot to talk about here, so I don't kind of want to spend too much time in the introduction. But basically, Emma, there's really no one I know who's done more sales calls in terms of signing up students on the phone than Emma, and she's just absolutely amazing at it. There are times when she gets like 100%. So basically, anyone who rings up inquiring about guitar lessons, and I'm not talking about someone just booking in and saying, "Hey, yeah, I'll turn up and pay when I get there." I'm talking about actually taking payment over the phone. Never met her. In many cases, they'd never been to our school. They didn't know who we were, but she literally was signing them up over the phone. So she has a real talent for customer service, a real talent for connecting with people. And this is what we're going to talk about in this. But I'm just going to start off by introducing Emma. Thanks, Emma, for joining us. I know you're very busy these days. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolute pleasure. So let me just give people a little bit of history first on your music background. So when did you first start learning music? Just for the record, you play what instruments?
Okay, I started with the recorder at school, like many people do, much to their parents' disgust, I think, sometimes. And then when I was about 7 or 8, I started with the clarinet, just in the school band, one-on-one lessons, with tutorials at school, I think it was at the time. And then I got some private lessons on top of that because I loved it so much. And then when I went to high school, so I would have been about 12, the music teacher said to me, "There's a saxophone. Do you want to try the saxophone?" So I did the saxophone, loved the saxophone, still played the clarinet, did exams on the clarinet and the saxophone. Then I had some piano lessons because people told me that if I wanted to be a musician, I really should have some piano skills as well. And just always involved in music, playing, singing in the choir, started writing Christmas carols when I was 12 years old, all that kind of thing. So it's just been there for my whole life, basically.
Fantastic. And you've had a kind of a real, I know you very well, so you've had a real love for blues, is that right?
Yeah. I love to listen to blues. I love, I think playing the saxophone, kind of you fall into that area. Grew up, my mum and dad listened to a lot of music, so a bit of everything, Van Morrison, a lot of blues, a lot of guitar music as well, strangely. Well, not strangely, it's probably how I've ended up here.
Yep. Well, it's quite interesting because even though you don't play guitar, you probably signed up more guitar students than most guitar teachers.
Probably signed up more guitar students than students on the instruments I play.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to put it in perspective for the viewers, is that you worked with me from about the year 2000. I had a school in Sydney, which was the biggest suburban music school in Sydney at the time, and we're talking about enrolling literally hundreds and hundreds of students every year, and then when we went to G4, we expanded. We had 5 schools, and you were enrolling for all schools, which we're talking like 1,000 students enrolled across those schools. And you were pretty well on the phone every day enrolling people. And so I don't know how many thousands of guitar students you enrolled, but you enrolled a lot of students.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. So describe your own learning experience. So how did you learn? Did you have a teacher? Tell me a bit more about how you learned.
Yeah, I had obviously a recorder was a group thing at school. Clarinet was the school band, and then we had tutorials, much like I teach our local school band now. And then when it came to saxophone, I had a private saxophone tutor, so one-on-one, who would come to my house. And the same for piano. So, my mum and dad would spend a lot of time driving me around from one place to another, rushing around between lessons. And I don't ever remember them saying they couldn't afford it or they didn't have time to. And I know they probably couldn't afford it, but it was just one of those things that happened because that was what I wanted, but also what they wanted for me, and they could see the passion that was growing. So probably, more of a traditional learning, learnt to read music, did exams, and then went on. It's funny, when I did my A-levels, being in England, I did music, English and history, got my highest marks in music, made some strange decision when I went to uni that I would be better off doing English and music because I didn't want to get bored of the music, which was ridiculous because I spent all my time with the music faculty and hanging around with the music students. So I ended up quitting English and just focused on the music side of it and did a music degree in England.
Yep. Okay, so from there, what I like to do is just find out a couple of things on what are some of the things you learned from your teachers, one or two things that you can think of that were kind of lessons that you took away for your own teaching?
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to name names, but my first clarinet teacher didn't focus on technique. And as a result, I didn't realize at the time, but my technique was pretty horrible. And then I found another teacher later on who focused more on technique, and he basically got me to start again from scratch. So bearing in mind I was probably 12 or 13, I'd been playing the clarinet for 4 or 5 years, thought I was the bee's knees, got this new teacher who said to me, nah, everything's wrong. We need to start again. And here's book 1, page 1, lesson number 1, off you go. It corrected my technique, maybe practice in front of a mirror. So I, with my students, am very tough on technique from the start. I don't care if it takes us longer to get to the same point. But it's really important that the technique is there right from the start. So that's probably one of the biggest learnings.
I get that because my first teacher was terrible, and my first teacher was me. I was my first teacher. I was shockingly bad because I knew nothing about guitar and I was teaching myself. And then when I went to my first real teacher, who was absolutely great, Mark Bergman is his name, it was like starting again. Exactly like you say. I just literally had to throw everything out the window and, all right, let's go from scratch.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. Yep.
And my saxophone teacher sadly had emphysema. So he was obviously much older and had grown up in that era where everyone smoked and musicians smoked. And, he used to use the ornate part around the bottom of his saxophone to hold his cigarette while he was playing. Ended up with emphysema, had to stop playing, would drive to my lesson with his oxygen mask, ironically plugged into the cigarette lighter of his car. And that was a really big thing for me. I mean, it made me never even try smoking because I just thought this poor man can't do the one thing he loves. So I've never even tried a cigarette in my life because I just thought, what's the point when you're going to end up like that? But yeah, it made me realize, if you're determined about something, you're going to do it no matter what. He would turn up to my lessons absolutely exhausted, struggling to breathe, but would still be there because he loved it, basically.
Yeah, fantastic. It's quite sad, isn't it? Yeah, I know, because one of the reasons I quit playing live back in the 80s, in not live fully, but playing in venues, was because back in those days, smoking was a part of the scene. Yeah. And so here we were playing in these rooms full of smoke, and I just couldn't take it anymore because I don't smoke. My mother's got emphysema now, and it's very sad, very tragic because, it was, I guess, for that era, probably they knew a little bit, but back in that era, it was just everybody did it and they thought it was okay to do. What surprises me today is I don't want to preach to anyone here, but smoking today, with all the knowledge and the information and the evidence we see, I'm still surprised that people do it. But anyway, so that's great. So in terms of advice for teachers that you would give, what's something that you would say to let's say more the beginner teacher, someone who's just starting out as a music teacher? What are some tips you would give them?
I would say it's really important to be yourself, to not try and to be someone else. I mean, like, I had amazing teachers, but I'm never going to be them. And that doesn't just relate to teachers, that relates to people in general. We need to be individual and be ourselves. to have a structure and to make sure that the technique is there right from the start, because otherwise you're just gonna be fighting a losing battle in the long run, because you're gonna be churning out students with bad technique, bad posture, and you're gonna end up being that teacher that people avoid because they don't want bad habits.
So just a question on that. Why do you think that teachers compromise on technique? What motivates them to even think about compromising on technique? Because a lot of them do it. Let's be honest. I did it for a long time as well, where I compromised on technique. Why do you think they do it?
I think because they get to, like, I run a school band, and the school put pressure on the band to perform as quickly as possible. So I'm strong, you know what I'm like? I'm strong enough in myself and my own abilities to say, no, they're not ready yet. Whereas I think as a new teacher, it would be very easy to say, yes, okay, we'll play an assembly in week 5, and then get the kids rushing through those early points. We're into term 2, and we're into week 3, and we're still only on exercise number 6 of our band book. Now, I know other schools that are on to number 22, number 24, but I know that their technique is shocking. It might take us longer to get to that same point, but they're going to be better musicians. For me, it's not just about taking the money and pretending to teach them and make them sound okay. It's about teaching them the right way to learn, and it's also about teaching them how to learn an instrument, not just banging out a few notes and hitting the drum.
Yeah, I agree. It's that pressure. Sometimes it's from external, like in the case of talking about schools. Sometimes it's the student wanting to, are we there yet? You know, parents, I remember, would say things like, when's he going to play a song, or when's she going to play a song? It was like, I felt this pressure to get them to play a song so that they could then say, well, I've learned something. Well, yeah, you can play the song, but you play it really badly. I totally get that.
Yeah.
So, because what I want to do is dig down into what is your real strength here. You've got a lot of strengths, by the way, but the main one that I think is going to be helpful for my viewers is your customer service, the way that you connect with students, the ability you have, especially when you take those calls on the phone, to turn someone in from a stranger, almost a skeptic, if you like, into a person who's reading out their credit card numbers. And I've been there, just so people understand. I've been there and I've heard it, and I've seen that, you're literally in the call and 2 or 3 minutes later you're saying, what's your credit card number? And they're giving it to you. So there's some kind of magic going on there, and I just want to kind of understand it. Maybe if you tell us where you got that skill from, that talent, and then talk about how you do it.
If I tell you, I'll have to kill you. So that could be a problem.
We'll have to end the call here.
Okay, so I said to you yesterday, when I was 14, I got a job in a hardware shop, just a Saturday job, and it literally was, in my mind, it was just to earn some extra money so I could go and buy some clothes, being a girl and liking clothes.
Yep.
But it turned out probably to be the best training that I could have imagined. So I worked Saturdays. I'd ride myself to the shop, or my mum and dad would drop me off. And I worked for an amazing man who was pretty much blind. And I'm talking a hardware shop, not like Bunnings where everything's nicely arranged on the shelves. It was dirty. There was lino on the floor. It was ripped. It was smelly. There was dust everywhere. The screws were priced per 10, and you had to work out how much single screws were. And it was, it was a bit of a male-dominated shop as well, because, I don't like to.
It is a hardware store. It's kind of,
exactly.
Yes, you go to dress shops, we go to hardware stores.
Yeah. But the gentleman that ran it, Mr. Holt, was pretty much blind, but he knew everything that was going on in that shop. He knew where everything was. He knew if there was a bottle of brass iron missing off the shelf, he knew it, even though he could barely see. And one of the things he was really tough on was making sure that we greeted every single person that came into the shop. So even if we were with a customer, it was just looking up and saying, good morning, I'll be with you soon. So that's probably one of the biggest things. And now as a customer, when I go into a shop, if I don't get a hello within the first 2 minutes, I leave. Doesn't matter how badly I want what's in the shop. If they can't be bothered to look up and smile at me, then then it's all over straight
Don't
away.
you don't you love those retail experiences where you walk in and
Yeah.
sort of, you know, like, and I won't name any names here, but there's a big hardware store not far from here where, yeah, I've walked in there and they're literally, you know, the staff, it's like you're inconveniencing them if you
Yeah.
ask them for help. Excuse me. And they're like, they roll their eyes. Oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, if I have to.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah, so and we would not have to, but we would have to make sure that whoever we were serving, we serve them from, this has only just occurred to me now actually, we serve them from the second they walk into the shop to the second they walked out of the shop. So if they asked for something that I didn't know the answer to, and this happened a lot, I was a 14-year-old girl in a hardware shop. So often people would come in, and I'd even have older guys come in and I'd say, can I help you? And they go, no, probably not. And I'd go, oh, that would rile me. And I'd say, try me. And they go, okay, well, I need so-and-so and so-and-so. And I obviously over time I got to know all these things and I've got to be able to give advice and what have you. But I would say, look, I can't answer that question, but I'll go and find out the answer. Can you just wait a second? And I'd go and I'd talk to Mr. Holt and he'd look and not be able to see me and help me. And I'd go back to the customer and then I would finish the sale myself. So it was making sure that I followed the whole process from start to finish and taking ownership of that customer while they were in the shop. So that was really important to him, which then became really important to me as a result of that.
Cool. So really being present, I think, is a big part of it. And that's something that I've seen missing with, you know, in a lot of customer service situations and okay, we're teachers, but we're still serving somebody. And so being present and when you're on the phone, it's so easy to not be present, to be on the phone and be thinking about something on the internet or checking your Facebook or just not really connecting with the person. And you know, you feel that, I feel that when you make an inquiry and you feel the person on the other end is not really listening to me, they don't really care, you know, about my problem. So yeah, and I think it's quite rare actually. I think, you know, I'd encourage anyone, any teachers, you know, to ring 10 places and just see how well they connect with you, and feel and have that empathy with you. Not that they're just trying to pitch to you or you know, trying to or they feel distant or unconnected. So yeah, sorry, go on, Emma.
Yeah, so I think working in the hardware shop, I worked there for 4 years, so pretty much holidays to start with, and then it became holidays, and then it became, you know, and over that time you get to know the regular customers and the other stuff, and then I went away to uni, and then when I came home in the holidays, I was probably the longest standing Saturday member of staff that they've ever had, and then I'd go back in the holidays to do the window display, and because he basically, you know, I just kind of became part of the furniture, so not only the customer service side, but also, you know, he wouldn't let us use a calculator. So everything had to be worked out. So we, you know, we're allowed to have a piece of paper and a pen, but like I said, everything was priced per 10 or by weight, and people would want 2 of something or half a pound. So we'd have to work it out. So my mental arithmetic got very strong as a result, but also having to deal with the customer while you're working it out. So saying that, excuse me a second, I just need to work this out, and having the confidence to say that and explain to them, Mr. Holt won't let us use a calculator, because they go, can't you just ring it off on the till? And I would say, no, I'm going to work it out this way. And
Brilliant.
yeah,
Brilliant.
So
it's impressive. It's impressive. It gives the impression, and Mr. Holt was obviously a very smart man, because it gives the impression that you're intelligent, right? If you can do this in your head, you obviously know. If you can do that, then you probably know a lot more. And so then I'm in good hands. I love it when I go to a restaurant. Think of how rare it is, right? I love it when I go to a restaurant and the waiter comes up and says, okay, what are you having, sir? What are you having, ma'am? What are you having? What are you having? And they write nothing down and they take 6 orders, you know, 3 items per person. And they walk away and you think, what? How the hell do they remember that? And they have techniques, like they put numbers on each of the items. And so they know it's a, you know, they just create a number in their head and they go, this is the order. It's amazing. It's impressive.
And then they bring it out and they take the meals to the right people, because they know in their head, it's almost like the memory game. You know, I went to market and I bought da-da-da-da-da-da, or turning over the cards and matching the pairs. They know that they start from the first person on the left and then they work around the circle.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I've worked in restaurants too.
Well, there you go. And
Yeah.
you know these things are unusual. You see it, you recognize. We went to a restaurant on the weekend and it was packed. And anyway, we got in there and I'm thinking, wow, and it was noisy. And I'm thinking, wow, it's packed and it's noisy. They're doing really well. They must be doing something right. And what happened is the waitress came over. She pulled up a chair. She put it at the end of our table and sat down. Yep. At our eye level, right? Instead of standing over us, she sat down at our eye level. And it was like you knew her. You just had this real, she was kind of very motherly and very kind of, okay, so what are we all having? And there was just, it's just different. So, yeah.
Did you give her a big tip?
Yes, absolutely. Of course. Of course. I think she was half the owner anyway, but if she wasn't the owner, she certainly felt like she was.
Yeah. Yep. When I worked in restaurants, I actually used to love people complaining, which sounds strange, but we'll probably get onto that.
Well, yeah, complaints are opportunities, aren't they?
Yeah, I just love it. And people, I became supervisor, and people would come, like other waiting staff would come and go, "Can you talk to table 8? They're being really difficult." I'd go, "Yeah, sure." And my favourite line, if someone had a complaint or an issue, was to say, "How can I make this better for you? How can I fix this?" Because people don't expect you to ask about how they feel, and they expect you to flap around. I remember one day I spilt a pint of Coca-Cola across a man who was in town for a boat show, and it slid off the tray and it fell, and this whole pint of Coke went down his cream chinos, and he ended up leaving me a £15 tip, which is about $40, and that was probably 20 years ago. Wow. And just the way you can turn it around and the way you deal with it can end up being, a really positive experience instead of a negative one.
So you didn't run out the back and cry or just lose it? No. I
probably laughed.
well, it's interesting because with everything, there is an opportunity, and I think I used to same, and I think this is where we relate a lot, is that if someone was angry, upset, or whatever for any reason in one of the stores that I worked in, because I worked in retail very early, like yourself, I would be the one who would step up. I love that challenge, and it's the same with teaching. I love the student who no one else could really help or teach or want to teach. I love the turnaround. To me, it's the turnaround. Anyone can teach an easy student. That's they're a walk in the park.
I've got a little boy in band who's got I've got 4 drummers in band, and two of them are, if the school were to describe them, they would be the challenging kids in the class, the ones with the attention issues, that kind of thing. So they're perfect for the drums because they like everything to be right. And one of them has just been playing super fast, like everything's fast because he does everything fast. So I grabbed his mum at the end of school last week and I just said, maybe we get him, download a metronome and get him to play with the metronome, and I do it on 60 beats a minute and blah blah blah. So he came in and his mum sent me a message and said he's loved it, he's doing it on 60, da da da. He came in and he was all excited and showed me. And then I said to him, right, I said, I need you to be the metronome for the whole band now. So he was sat there all proud and pumped up, and he played perfectly in time. But then I just made sure that night I messaged his mum and said, he did an amazing job today. You should be really proud of him. Whatever you did with him this week, thank you, because it's made a big difference. Rah, rah, rah. And she wrote back saying, I'm so grateful for the time that you've given him and for showing him, that he can do this. And it's, it was minutes out of my time.
Fantastic. Because it makes even more difference with children like that, because the parents are used to teachers giving up on them. They're used to the kind of the constant, and so if you can take a child that everyone else has given up on and shine some light there and turn things around, you're going to get not only the respect of the parents, but the child will remember you for years often. I like to use the example of Michael Phelps. Anyone who knows Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer, probably the all-time greatest, Olympic athlete ever. He was a very difficult child. ADHD, very, very hard to work with. And so we can look at Michael Phelps and go, wow, what an amazing guy. But my interest is in the coach who's the
Yeah.
coach.
Yeah.
And I watched a documentary recently on him, and yeah, his coach is amazing guy. I definitely recommend anyone check out that as a teacher. If you're a coach, teacher, anything under those, check out the Michael Phelps doco.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the customer service, the signing up of students. I want to dig deep here. I know you can't give years and years of experience in 20 minutes, but let's just see if we can pick a few things out. And I think sometimes when people watch these videos, they're expecting to get the whole formula. That unfortunately, some things come with years of experience. Same as you can't teach someone to become a brilliant guitarist in 20 minutes. You're not going to become a brilliant customer service salesperson in 20 minutes, but you're going to get some ideas, some tips, and things to work with. So let's start, Emma. What are some basics that you would share?
The most important thing is making a connection. So you need to connect with the person. Now, the lessons might be for a 5-year-old son, but the 5-year-old son isn't on the phone. You need to connect with the person on the phone. So that, that might be asking how they are. I did it today I actually needed something done for me. And the lady on the other end of the phone was like, oh, I don't know if we'll be able to. And I said, oh, look, I've made a big mistake. I've stuffed up. I really would appreciate it if you can do this for me. So she went off, she came back, and I said, oh, can you make sure that you go and give that person a huge hug for me? And she just laughed. And it ended up that she's now doing what I needed her to do on Monday today. Because, I laughed, I connected with her, I'd asked her how her day was. She'd put me on hold when I'd first called. So I said, oh, you must be having a really busy day, are you? Just have a chat.
Connect. It's all about connecting. Yeah.
Definitely connecting. Okay. The other thing
just before you do that, can we just sort of dig a little bit deeper on the connecting? Yeah. What would you do? What are kind of some of the things you would say? Let me use a couple of examples of people. Let's say I'm a parent, I'm ringing about my child having guitar lessons. How would you connect with me?
I would ask if the child has ever played anything before. But then I would also ask about the parent, because people like to talk about themselves. Everyone likes to talk about themselves. I've got a couple of little catchphrases that I use. And that is be interested, not interesting. So be interested in them, ask them questions about themselves. Have you played a musical instrument? Did you play anything when you were younger? That will lead to them saying, no, I didn't, or yes, I did, and I gave up. So you just ask more questions. The other part.
I love that, being interested in them. Yep. So, because so often it's easy to get wrapped up in talking about ourselves. And what we're doing and how good a teacher we are and why you should come and learn with us, all the while neglecting who they are and what they're interested in. Yep.
And what happens when they're telling you about themselves is they give you little clues. So, they might say, I started learning the saxophone, the guitar when I was 8, and then you go, why did you stop? Well, my mum and dad couldn't afford it, or I didn't practice, so my mum and dad stopped lessons. Then that drops a little signal in my brain, and then later on in the conversation I will bring that back and I'll say, look, we spoke earlier about how you stopped because you weren't practicing, so your mum and dad thought it wasn't worth spending the money. You need to remember that at some points your child's not going to want to practice. How do we deal with that? Because you know how you felt as a child. So it's not just about, you're not just going through the motions of asking questions. You're actually making them feel good, making them feel important, being interested in them, but then using that information later on.
Because that shows you're listening, right? That shows that you are absolutely listening to what they're saying, and you're bringing back that in conversation. So now you're almost old friends because now you know who they are, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I always say to people when I'm helping people with sales is that it comes back to the interested and interesting. You've got one mouth for talking and 2 ears for listening. So you need to listen twice as much as you talk.
Yep.
And I think that applies when we teach as well. I think as teachers we can be very guilty of going off on our ramblings because we know what they need to learn, instead of talking to them, asking them questions. When you ask a question, someone becomes engaged and present. If you just start rambling, then people start daydreaming and not really listening.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely agree. And so once you've sort of built that connection up, where does it go from there? What so you were going to make a second point. So yeah, lead us into the second scenario.
I remember what the second point was now. No, just about building a relationship so they trust you. I also use what I call a mirroring technique. So if someone gives me some information about themselves, I will try and give them a little bit of information about myself. But I don't want to talk about myself a lot. It's just about, relating to them and helping to understand that I know where they're coming from. So if we're talking about a child not practicing, for example, or, I gave up because I didn't practice, I will say, I totally understand you. My 8-year-old's learning the clarinet, and some days it's a real fight to get her to practice, but da-da-da-da-da-da. So people need to understand that you get where they're coming from and they know what you're talking about, and you're not just there to sell them something. They
Yeah.
actually are interested.
And when you listen to people, what I found is that the more you listen, the more they'll open up to you as well.
Yeah.
So they'll start to reveal things about themselves on a personal level. And once people start to reveal a personal side of themselves and they feel that connection with you, it's very hard for them not to follow through. In other words, I now feel connected to this person. I feel like this is someone I can trust. Why would I go looking for another teacher? And so when I hear that story of people, and I know it from my own especially early sales experience, is that when someone says, thank you very much, you're going to have a look around, we'll come back to you, don't call us, we'll call you kind of deal, then you know that you haven't built that trust. Because why would they go seeking a stranger when they built a relationship and a connection with you? And I think the real magic with you, Emma, comes because you can do it so quickly. I think that, I've seen you literally, within 60 seconds go from stranger on the phone to, laughing and talking like old friends. Sometimes I'm even suspicious whether or not you were talking to customers. But yeah, it's
hypnosis.
Yeah, and we did, like open day presentations and concerts and so forth. And this is something that I do want to share with my audience, is that those the open day, there was one particular open day and there was a couple of concerts we did, and I was just to tell the story very quickly, I was overseas and Emma was organizing this concert, and she rang me and she was in a panic, and I said, I thought the whole thing had collapsed, it wasn't going to work. She said, we've sold so many tickets, we can't fit them in, they're lined up out on the street, it's just crazy. And I'm like, what do you mean? And ended up, I think the capacity, what was it, 300 people in the room, and
I can't remember. It was ridiculous.
We'd gone too far with it. You hadn't put the brakes on it, which was, it needed the brakes put on it. But that was the success of the trust that you built, because as you connected with all these people, they would go, of course we're going to come, Emma. Why, and that's where, once you build that trust, people will go on and not only just sign in for lessons, but they'll turn up to your concerts and workshops and anything else you do. So continue. What else can you share in terms of what are common mistakes people make?
Okay, one thing that I try and do is, if I'm the teacher, which I guess a lot of the people that are watching are they're doing the bookings and they are the teacher, and they're kind of doing everything. The first contact doesn't need to be a separate thing to the first lesson. So what I mean by that is, okay, so dad calls up to book in his daughter, and you're trying to find a time for lessons, and he says, I can't come Wednesday because she's got dancing, and I can't come Thursday because she's got swimming. And you say, okay, Friday, 4:00. When they come for their lesson on Friday at 4:00, you turn to the daughter and you say, how was dancing on Wednesday? Or how was swimming yesterday? Because immediately that little girl, who is absolutely petrified of coming to a lesson with someone that she doesn't know, even though dad thinks you're a nice person on the phone, that little girl goes, oh, yeah, dancing was good. And then that you've created that relationship with the child as well. Plus the dad goes, wow, she's good. She remembered. So make a note of things. I've always got a pencil and paper handy, and I'll just write, Friday, 4 p.m, Isabel danced Wednesdays, swims Thursdays. And just like we said, people like to feel that you're interested in them.
Brilliant, brilliant. Because it's sometimes it's because I've used that technique as well, and that's an absolute brilliant technique. And sometimes they're almost like, how do you know that I do dancing?
Yeah.
How do you know that about me? How do you know that I've got a dog called Fred? So yeah, taking those little notes, and sometimes even if the parents told you, they don't remember telling you.
No.
But it's just it shows how aware you are. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so what would you say are some common mistakes that say teachers make?
I think a common mistake in when you're talking to someone as part of that sales process is trying to sell to start with. As soon as I've got to,
so you shouldn't be selling if you're not connected, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've got another little saying. I've got a lot of little sayings that selling is repelling. So if people feel like they're being sold, then they're going to back away, and you're just going to push them away. So you want to. It's all about connecting with them, building the relationship, and then you often don't even need to get to that conversation of are you going to book in, because it just happens organically, and before you know it, they're going. So I just kind of will weave it into the conversation. I'll say, what other activities does your daughter do? Oh, she dances on Wednesday and she swims on Thursday. Okay, so the best days for lessons would be Tuesday or Friday. Yes. Okay, what time Tuesday? Well, we can do 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. Okay, well, how about we do 4 o'clock on Tuesday? So you don't ever have to say, so are you going to book? Or so
yes.
are we doing this? Because then you're given the opportunity to say no.
I'll think about it. Yeah. I'll think about it. Yeah. I'll come back to you. Yep.
I assume if someone has gone to the bother of calling me or submitting a form that they want lessons. I don't ever think that anyone's an inquiry. I think when the phone rings or when I call someone, in my head I've already told myself, this is a new student, I'm just calling, or they're just calling to confirm their time.
Yeah.
So I don't ever think that it's an inquiry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I would say that, almost every single person who calls, maybe there's the odd one here and there, but almost every single person who calls is hoping you're the right person, because they don't want to have to ring anyone. They don't want to have to do anymore. No. They're just hoping that you're the right person for themselves or their child to learn guitar with. And so really they're going through the motions and they're looking for a reason not to sign up with you.
Yes.
And if you give them that reason, and say they say something like, "Well, think about it. Thanks very much for the information. I'll talk to my husband, wife, whatever." Then you know that you've somehow set up a red flag for them where they're not convinced that you're the right person.
And I like you said before, 100% booking, which is probably true. That's because I don't think anyone's going to say no.
Yes, well, you actually go further than that. I would say that it's, and people might not understand this at first, but I would say that it's more like 120%, and that's because you would often sign up a second person on the phone when their intention was to sign up one person. So maybe it's to sign up their son or daughter, and then the other sibling, they sign them up as well, because that's the level of trust. They're like, well, I'm obviously talking to the right person. Good teachers are hard to find, whatever, good schools. I like what they're doing. So, and so they sign up a second person.
Yeah.
Or sometimes the parent too, right?
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes the parent. I think it's, I've said to people, I think another mistake is trying to squeeze in a sales call when you don't have the time and you're not in the right headspace. If you're trying to squeeze in making 5 phone calls, return messages in a 15-minute gap in your timetable between lessons, then you may as well not bother. You need to set aside the time rather than, because if you're rushed, people are going to pick up on that. You need to be calm. You need to be at the computer. You need to be in the right headspace, just as you do for playing and practicing and teaching. And you need to be, if you're teaching from 4 till 7, then you teach from 4 till 7. You make your phone calls between 2 and 4 and 7 and 8, whatever it is. I think trying to squish it all in and juggle 5 things at once is just heading for disaster.
It's almost like a performance, like getting on
Yeah.
stage. You're not going
Yeah.
to get on the phone and talk to an inquiry while you're still kind of halfway through other things or have other things on your mind. So, yeah.
You actually do a disservice to everyone. You do a disservice to your students. You do a disservice to the next student walking in because you're on the phone and you're not present and engaged with them. And you know that if I'm going to drop my kids off at a music lesson, I want the person at the front desk to look up and say hello. I don't want them to be scribbling and, you know, disorganized and distracted with other things.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody loses basically in that scenario. Yeah, nobody's getting 100% of your attention. And the interested part, which is really, I think, the takeaway here, the most important part is that being interested in the person that you're talking to, and you can't do that if you're trying to do 2 or 3 things at once.
No, definitely.
So let's just switch for a minute here, because like I said, there's a whole huge range of things that we can talk about. But one other thing that I want to talk about is, what do you do with that student who has complained for some reason? So you talk about complaints before, because you in your role and your capacity with me and with G4 and the schools that I ran, is that you would not only get inquiry calls, but sometimes you get complaints where people would say, you know, not happy with this, or something went wrong, and I'm very, very disappointed. How do you handle those situations?
First of all, you need to be empathetic. You don't need to add fuel to the fire. So, you know, it's not about the customer being always right, because they're not always right. But it's about hearing them and hearing their concerns. So be interested, ask, you know, so I'm sorry you feel that way. Saying I'm sorry you feel that way isn't saying that you're justified. It's saying I'm sorry you feel that way. You know, you can have an amazing teacher who someone just doesn't gel with, and they see everything that's perfect as being imperfect. So you don't ever want to criticize your teacher in front of a parent. But you can say, I'm sorry you feel that way, or I'm sorry that happened. And then my favorite trick of saying, how can I make it better? How can we fix it for you? Because you don't want to be doing that backwards and forwards. Well, how about I give you a free lesson? No, I don't want a free lesson. Well, how about I give you, you know, a pick? Well, no, I don't want a pick. So it's much easier to say, how can I make this better for you? How can we resolve this? What would be your perfect outcome to this scenario?
Yep.
And then they're actually going to go, oh, she cares. She's interested. She wants to make it better for me. And they're going to think about what it is they want. What do they want from it? Why are they complaining? Some people just like complaining.
True. I think we've all been there too. Like, I'm guilty of being a complainer at times. And sometimes I realize this person's being really nice to me, and I was angry because things didn't go well. So I think we all need to be honest and know that sometimes we're on the other end of that call too. And even though that sometimes I've been the complainer and I've been wrong too. I've been complaining about something that I realized, actually, I'm in the wrong here. You know, I might have got billed for something that I thought I shouldn't have been billed for. I'm angry, and then I realized, actually, I did do that. I did make that purchase on my credit card. And so, but what do I really want from the person on the other end? Well, what I want is kind of to feel better. And if that person can make me feel better, no matter who's wrong or right, no matter what the circumstances, then the trust comes back, right? And then you can work from there. And it's amazing, again, if you can turn that around. It's the difficult clients, difficult customers. If you can turn them around, they're the one. And that's really, I think, is a huge strength of yours, Emma, is your ability to turn people around. I saw you do it, because, you know, as with any business, we didn't get it right every time, and we, you know, sometimes perhaps I got a bit lazy because I knew Emma would be there to catch. But the idea is, if you can turn people around, it's a big bonus to your business. So let's just play out one scenario with that, just to kind of finish up this call. But let's just say that a student has been learning guitar with a teacher for 6 months and they haven't made any progress, or they don't feel they've made any progress. They're not happy with the progress, and they feel like they've wasted their money. What would you say to someone like that? Let's just play it out. And you say to me there, so can you put it in your words again, the question?
I would start by finding out what their expectations were. to
Okay.
start with, but I would have found that out at the start, so I would know what their expectations were.
Yes.
I would say, how can we make this better? Or, you know, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry little Johnny hasn't been practicing, and I'm sorry that now he's frustrated because he can't do what he, he wants to be able to do. How can we fix this? How can we make it better for you?
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. So then let's just say the parent responds by saying, I have no idea. All I know is that, you know, my money's been a complete waste. I've got nothing for my money. 6 months with you guys, and you know, he can't even play a song.
Yeah.
So where do you go from there? I'm trying to make this purposely difficult for you, Emma.
Thanks. I would say, look, I really want to work with you. It's really important to me that we work together to make sure that Johnny's getting the most from his lessons. You know, what is it? Specify what it is. So whether it's working out, not being able to play a song or whatever that might be. And then say, look, in order to be able to play that song, specifically that song, these are the things that Johnny needs to be able to do. If you look on this checklist, level 1 checklist covers all those skills. So for Johnny to be able to play he needs to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Can we work together to make sure he gets those skills up so that he can play that song?
Brilliant. Yep. Excellent. So you're coming back with you're acknowledging the frustration, blah, 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 and then you're coming up with a plan as to how to get them back on track.
But you need to involve the parents. So the boy at school that I was telling you about, like you said, often mum only hears about what he's done wrong that day, or how hasn't sat down for 6 hours and concentrated because he just can't. I've involved mum, and I've said, look, can you ask mum if you can get that app on your phone? And he's like, mum, can I get that app? I've asked him in front of her, so she knows, but it's better than it coming from me directly to mum. I've involved him, so he's gone home and said, mum, can we get that app? Then I've sent, you know, I've messaged her directly, and I've involved just ignoring mum and trying to deal with the student one-on-one.
Yep. I think we cut out a bit there. So are you still there now, Emma?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Just cut out for a little bit there.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Sorry.
Can you just repeat that last part?
Yeah, and you've gone really quiet. I don't know what happened there. I just work with the parents, make sure that the parents are involved, and make sure that you're working with the parent and the child together to find a solution that works for everyone. Okay,
brilliant, brilliant. So let me go to this one, because I know this is a big one for guitar teachers. What do you do from the point of view of a teacher when students don't practice? How do you get them back on board?
I use the sport analogy a lot. I mean, the school that we're at, every child does sport outside of school, so I use the analogy of sport. I talk to the parents. I talk to the parents about everything. I really do create a relationship with the parents as well as the student, because I think if you only go to the parent when there's an issue, then you're going to lose, basically. You need to have a relationship with the parent. I've had parents say to me, I'd love to go out and have a glass of wine with you one night because I feel like we've become friends. So it's about having those relationships when things are all rosy, so that when things aren't rosy, they know you and they trust you enough to come to you and talk to you. I'll send a message to all my band students, parents, saying, there are going to be days when they don't want to practice. There's going to be days when they want to throw their saxophone out of the window. There's going to be days where you fight. There's going to be days where they love it. There's going to be days where you're thinking, is this worth it? On those days, you need to contact me and you need to tell me, and I can help you work through that. And just knowing that is a big relief. They kind of like, when it does happen, they go, oh, Emma said this would happen. And it's normal. Because
it's like, it's normalizing the situation. And that's, again, the takeaway for teachers watching this is the relationship building with the parents, and not just focusing and narrowing down onto the child and forgetting about the parent. And I see that again. That's a common problem I see, is where a student drops out and they don't realize. I talk about the decision maker. they don't realize that the child wasn't the decision maker. The
No.
parent was the decision maker.
Yeah.
So, and in some cases, the child can even be enjoying the lessons, but the parent just decides it's not worth spending any money on that one. Save a bit of money because we've got a few bills. They just stop the lessons and they make up some excuse like, he or she's got to concentrate on school or whatever. When really it was just the fact that there was no relationship there. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up. I know that you're a mum, so your kids, it's now coming up to the end of school, so your kids should be home very shortly. So a couple of last things. Are there any books, websites, blogs, mentors that you would recommend?
Everything.
Everything.
Read everything, listen to everything, and then make your own decision based on what you've read and listened to. I go through phases of things. I'm reading a book at the moment about confidence, and people will say to me, "You're lucky, you're so confident, you're so good on the phone, you're so lucky." And I'm like, well, it doesn't happen by accident. You don't just wake up confident. It's something that, becoming confident relies on you becoming competent. So it's the same with guitar. You don't wake up confident that you can play the guitar. You become confident because you've built up your competence. So it's the same as anything. It's the same with your inquiries, with talking to parents. If you're an introverted person, then, that doesn't mean you can't be confident, but maybe you need to work on building those relationships a bit more than if you weren't as introverted. So nothing is luck. Everything, it comes down to hard work.
Emma, break that down for me, because that's brilliant. Competence, confidence, how does that work?
So competence is basically building up your skills in something. So whether that's your skills playing the guitar, or whether that's your skills talking to people, or whether that's your skills, for me, getting up and teaching a Zumba class, once you are competent, then your confidence changes and you feel more comfortable with it and it becomes normal. So there's actually another step before the competence, which is courage. So you need to take the courage, and then to do whatever it is. Once you've taken that step and you've plucked up the courage, then you work on the skills and you become competent at whatever it is, and then your confidence grows. Then the next step is that you do something else that scares you, which is taking the courage, and then the competence in that thing grows, and then you become more confident at that thing.
That's it. That was a great summary. I really like that. And so if we talk about, let's say, I've had this with teachers where they don't teach young children, right? So they say, well, I won't teach anyone under about the age of 10. And I say, why? And they'll justify, they're not ready to learn. They're too young. They're immature. They can't sit still. Sort of, really? Is that your experience? And
that's why they're at school when they're 4.
Yeah, that's right. That's why, 3-year-old Chinese kids are playing violin like you wouldn't believe. The reason it comes back to the fact that they actually are uncomfortable in that zone. They're uncomfortable working with kids who aren't just sitting there up straight, giving them all the attention. They need to actually learn new skills to work with younger children. And so when I talk to teachers who have that kind of fear, I get down to the reality of it, and that is that there's a fear there of teaching children of a certain age group. And then so if they face that fear, then they start to gain the skills and the competence through experience, and then from there comes the confidence. So when you're talking to someone who's inquiring about lessons on the phone, the confidence for you personally comes from the ability that or the fact that you know how to do it. You know the answers to provide. So courage, competence, confidence. Brilliant. I think we should end it there. Thanks so much for your time, Emma.
Pleasure.
And I hope to have you on again sometime because there's so much experience that you and I have shared actually. There's a lot of areas that we can just discuss and throw back and forth. And we've seen a lot of different scenarios. So it'll be good to have you again sometime if you're willing. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you.
And bye for now.
Bye.
Just before we leave, sorry, one last thing. What are you doing these days? You're teaching, running your own business?
I teach Zumba Gold. I teach Zumba in nursing homes. I've actually just set up a company that connects people with nursing homes, whether they're Zumba instructors or musicians or entertainers or whatever they might be, just to get people working with the elderly, basically. And I run a network marketing business as well. So
Brilliant. And I know
which
that
is
you're
coaching and mentoring and
you're coaching people, right? In how to fantastic.
Yeah, and coaching in sales and confidence too.
Cool. Well, look, if anyone wants to get in contact with you, I'll just they can come through me and I'll send them to
Fabulous.
you. And fantastic. Thanks again,
Thank
Emma.
you.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.